Welcome to Alabama Justice Lawyering Up. My name is Richard Jaffe, the senior partner in the Birmingham, Alabama law firm of Jaffe, Hanle, Whisonant, and Knight. We are going to explore with you the hottest cases, the most controversial topics of Alabama justice, and we're going to bring to you exciting key players that make our Alabama justice work or not work. We look forward to having you. Welcome to another segment of Alabama Justice Lawyering Up. I'm Richard Jaffe, along with one of my partners, Brett Knight, and we have an exciting guest today. This is former presiding judge Brian Huff and now attorney Brian Huff. Brian, Judge, welcome.
Sorry, Richard, Brett, thank you for having me on. I appreciate that.
It's always fun whenever we talk because we have a good time doing it.
Absolutely.
And a good time working on cases together.
Absolutely. We make practicing law fun. If you can make it fun, absolutely, and do a good job, that's what it's all about.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. What does that mean by doing a good job?
To be thorough, to represent your client's best interests, and also to manage your client's expectations. I have cases where clients come in and they expect the moon, and while you have to explain to them that if I do the best job that could possibly be done, you might deserve the moon, but the judge isn't going to give you the entire moon. The other side may get a star or two while we're out there in court. And that's the difference sometimes between divorce court and juvenile court and some of the other courts. Some courts, it's either you win or you lose. And in divorce court, I oftentimes say there are no real winners because most people are going to be somewhat unhappy with the result. As a judge, you know that if someone is perfectly happy with the result of a divorce case, you've probably not done a very good job. That's also why it's best to try and settle divorce cases. When you're dealing with a divorce case or a custody case, I ask my clients, do you want to leave the decision up to this person who you don't know sitting up there on that bench wearing a black dress? Or do you want to try and take control of the situation and keep it in your own hands and make the decision yourself? Sure, that may mean you make some concessions, but when you reach an agreement in a divorce case or a custody case, you have control over the concessions you make. When you try that case, that judge has total control over the concessions that are made for you.
There are some lawyers that aren't so, lack of a better word, professional or meticulous about managing their clients' expectations, aren't there?
That's true. There are good lawyers and there are bad lawyers. Just like there are good car salesmen and bad car salesmen and good pastry chefs and bad pastry chefs. There are lawyers who practice law in this state who are out there only to make a dollar. And they're willing to do whatever needs to be done to squeeze every possible penny out of a case. And that is not the sign of good lawyering.
So how does the public know?
Word of mouth is the main way to know. Did you find your lawyer on a billboard? Or did you talk to an acquaintance, a relative, a friend, a business partner who said, I had an experience with Richard Jaffe, or I had an experience with Brett Knight, or I had an experience with Brian Huff, and they did a good job representing me, and this is why. I think it's also good sometimes to have a budget in mind. Some people think that law is kind of like, free medical treatment, and it isn't. You have a right to medical treatment, as I understand it, if you show up at the emergency room and you're dying. If you come into a divorce lawyer's office, unfortunately, you're going to have to expect to pay. And the only thing that we have to sell is our time and our advice and our skill. So it's a good idea to sit down and think, what is my budget for this case? And if your budget for a divorce is $500, you might want to rethink your budget or sit down and think about preparing the divorce yourself.
Before Brett asks you a question, I want to ask you this. Have you always wanted to be a domestic lawyer? And what drew you to that area of the law?
No is the answer. I always wanted to be a lawyer since I was a child, simply because, I enjoy history, I enjoy the law, I like to argue and expound my position. But when I was in law school, I had no idea exactly what type of law I wanted to practice. I started working for a firm here in town, Boyd, Fern & Buke, some great guys who are still out there, and the two of them especially kind of took me in and showed me how to practice domestic relations law, and introduced me to the bench and introduced me to lawyers. And one thing that I learned from the two of them that I hope young lawyers could learn from me, and that is that you can be a gentleman or a lady, you can be a good person and still be an excellent, zealous advocate for your client.
And Judge, we actually share very similar experiences in that regards of not really knowing what you want to do when you go to law school. What advice would you give to people that are in law school at Cumberland, Birmingham School of Law, Jones, University of Alabama?
Intern. Find a firm and intern in as many places as you can, whether it be here with you guys. You guys have a great internship. There are firms out there, there are judges out there. Learn as much as you can about the law and meet as many lawyers as you can. There are so many different areas of law to go into, and there are so many people who have law degrees who don't practice law. I have good friends with whom I went to school who didn't bother to practice law. So you may decide, I do want this Juris Doctor, but I don't need to practice law.
So let me ask you this. You became the presiding judge of Jefferson County Family Court.
Yes.
What was that like in terms of managing the docket and dealing with all of the tragedies that are presented there?
Well, it's a great opportunity. And let me preface it by saying the gentleman who succeeded me out there, Raymond Chambliss, had lunch with him yesterday. He's doing a great job. But he shares the same unique opportunity that I share. Jefferson County Family Court, unlike a lot of counties, handles a certain type case. It handles child abuse and neglect cases. It handles juvenile criminal cases or juvenile delinquency cases. It handles custody cases with children born out of wedlock. And we typically had approximately 50,000 docketed cases every year that's coming up on the docket between 7 hearing officers, judges and trial referees in both the Birmingham and the Bessemer Division. It's a unique opportunity. It's a lot different from divorce court in that you have the opportunity to help parents improve themselves. And a good example is that Alan Summers, the district judge, one of the district judges out in juvenile court, started the family drug court in Jefferson County.
So he was innovative.
He was innovative while I was there. And that gives Judge Summers the opportunity to manage these people's cases who have substance abuse issues, see them with regular frequency, and monitor their compliance so that their children can be reunified with them more quickly. Another thing we did that I'm proud of when I was there, we reduced the juvenile jail detention center population from an average of about 120 down to about an average of 30.
No small feat.
When I left. No small feat at all.
Let's get more into that in just a moment. Let's take a break. We'll be right back with former Judge Brian Huff and now attorney Brian Huff. My name is Richard Jaffe. I am the senior partner in the Birmingham, Alabama law firm of Jaffe, Hanle, Whisonant, and Knight. I have been practicing law in the criminal and civil courts in Alabama and across the nation for over 40 years. I've represented thousands of people involved in the civil and criminal justice systems. I would like to invite you to watch and be a part of a new and unique and totally different television show about lawyers and the law, Alabama Justice Lawyering Up. It's going to air every day, but prominently on Tuesday nights, prime time, 9 o'clock p.m., and Thursday nights, 7:30 p.m. During our show, we're going to explore the hottest topics, the most controversial cases, the cases that you view every day, and we are going to bring you different perspectives by bringing in every key player in the civil and criminal justice system: lawyers, judges, prosecutors, detectives, probation officers, victims, experts. We're going to bring this to you so we can explore the different perspectives of Alabama justice and the importance of lawyering up.
Welcome back to Alabama Justice Lawyering Up. We're sitting here today with Brian Huff, a former presiding judge of Jefferson County, as well as a practicing attorney. Before the break, we were mentioning the juvenile detention facility.
Let me interrupt. Don't promote me. There are some judges who would upset. Former presiding juvenile judge in Jefferson County, not presiding judge. I was talking about our reduction in the inmate population at the detention center, and we reduced it by about 65 or 70%, primarily by not incarcerating low-level offenders. We didn't incarcerate nonviolent kids, and that ended up saving the taxpayers money, and hopefully it prevented us from introducing the idea to these kids that they're criminals and they belong in prison, and there are better ways to deal with them. But there's some good things going on out there, and we were and still are sort of a flagship among juvenile courts in the country.
Well, Judge, let's discuss a little bit more about some of your best cases while being the presiding judge. Can you explain a little bit more in detail?
Well, I mean, some of the most memorable cases, and I'm not going to use any names, just during my career, let's say that, the one that sticks out the most is I was representing a young lady in a custody case, and there was a period of time where the father had the child staying with him, and while the child was staying with the father, the grandmother, the father's mother, the paternal grandmother, showed up at the father's house and shot and killed the child. 3 years old. I had to call my client in and tell her that her 3-year-old toddler had been shot and killed. And as a judge and as a lawyer, that's the most difficult thing that I've ever had to do. And I had been practicing for probably a year and a half at that point. And I said to myself, as long as practicing law doesn't get any worse than this, I can do it. But if it gets worse, I'm out. I'm going to go start flipping burgers or something, but I'm not going to do this. That's the most memorable case that still sticks with me today. But the type law I practice now, and goes for a lot of the cases out in family court, they're all fairly memorable because you're dealing with people's lives. I know that you guys deal with murder, with capital punishment, and you're dealing with with life and death. And with a lawyer who handles domestic cases and family law, they're kind of doing that too. If you lose custody of your child, to a lot of people, that's life and death. And so you need a lawyer that's going to be prepared to go in and do that. Some of the more memorable cases that I have that are happy are adoptions. One of the few areas of law that I'm involved in where people are truly happy when they leave. When you're able to create a new family as opposed to ripping apart a family, that means the world. It's a blessing, and it's just the opposite of the story I told a few minutes ago. It puts a smile on your face. And if every day could be like that, then, I would love being at work every day.
Let's talk a little bit about juvenile law for a moment.
Sure.
It's a lot different, juvenile law, than adult law.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the differences. For example,
Okay.
a juvenile defendant, a person facing juvenile charges, doesn't have the right to a jury trial.
They don't. They only a bench trial in the state of Alabama. Your case, if you're a juvenile and you're charged with a crime in Alabama and you insist on a trial, it's going to be heard by a judge. And that judge is going to be the trier of fact.
And bail, it's different too, isn't it?
You're not entitled to bail. There's no law that specifically says that a child shall not be given bail, but the factors that a judge is to consider is what danger, if any, might the child be to himself or others, number one, if he's released, and then number two, what's the likelihood that the child would reappear at court. So I've never seen a juvenile judge condition a release on bail. I don't know that it would be, reversible, but I've never seen it happen. One major distinction that I think a lot of people don't realize is a super Miranda. Obviously, in adult court, we all know what the Miranda warning is. We see it in police shows all the time. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. And so your lawyers tell you, don't talk to the police without a lawyer. Always ask for your lawyer. Well, juveniles have an additional right, and that's to have a parent present. They have the right to remain silent. Everything they say can be used against them in a court of law, and they have a right to have their parent and their lawyer present. So if you are a child watching this show instead of cartoons and you're arrested, number one, don't talk to the police without your lawyer. Probably should be either Richard Jaffe or Brett Knight. Or number two, and insist that your parent be present, and I better not be your parent or you're going to be in even more trouble. So I'm going to need Richard Jaffe or Brett Knight if I'm your parent. But kids are entitled to that super Miranda. The other things that kids don't have, there's no determinate sentencing in the state of Alabama. So as a judge, I had kids that I tried that were charged with murder, that were charged with rape, that were charged with robbery, with all kinds of things, but I couldn't say you're going to juvenile for 5 years or however long. The most I could do is send them to the Department of Youth Services until they were rehabilitated according to the Department of Youth Services. There are some circumstances where a judge may impose a minimum of 1 year, and the Department of Youth Services would usually comply with that, but technically it's up to DYS, unlike the sentencing guidelines we